Mr. Speaker, I gently remind her that two of her predecessors had convictions for breaking the COVID rules. Mr. Speaker, I thought the scripted jokes were over, but we had another one about lectures about the economy from the party opposite. They broke the economy, mortgages through the roof, and a £22 billion black hole. And she talks about national insurance. She complains about the rise in national insurance week after week. But then 2 weeks ago, she says that she wouldn't reverse it. She signed trade deals, Mr. Speaker, that had farmers protesting in Whitehall. Now she pretends that she's their champion. She campaigned to remove the cap on migrant worker visas, and now she pretends she's furious about the open borders policy of the last government.
Nigel Farage didn't hold back, branding Kemi Badenoch's performance at Marquez as nothing short of a car crash in his latest post on X. Watching her flounder under Keir Starmer's relentless dismantling was nothing less than excruciating. Starmer ruthlessly laid bare the failures and hypocrisy at the core of Badenoch's record. He began by skewering her party's disastrous handling of the economy, soaring mortgages, a pest $22 billion black hole, and shattered public trust. Badenoch's weak defense crumbled as Starmer pointed out her flip-flopping on national insurance. Weeks of complaints about rising rates, only to admit she wouldn't reverse them. The hits kept coming. Starmer slammed her for signing trade deals that provoked farmers' protests while pretending to champion their cause. And then came the ultimate takedown, her immigration hypocrisy. Having once campaigned to remove caps on migrant worker visas, Badenoch now feigns outrage over the very open borders policies she actively supported. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a total evisceration. Badenoch didn't simply lose the exchange, she lost what little credibility she had left. Farage's description might have been harsh, but after today it feels almost generous. Here's what happened at PMQs between Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch. Let's watch.
The leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, if I may, I would like to pay tribute to Mandy Damari and her family for the strength that they have shown. And we on this side of the House, and I'm sure the whole House, continue to seek the speedy release of Emily Damari and the other hostages. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister talks about immigration. I think it's probably a good time to remind him that he was the one writing letters asking us not to deport foreign criminals. And he and his party voted against every single measure that we put in place to try and limit immigration. But, Mr. Speaker, the question today is what has been on the lips of all Labour MPs, including, I believe, the Health Secretary yesterday. The Prime Minister knowingly appointed a convicted fraudster to be his Transport Secretary. What was he thinking?
Mr. Speaker, the previous Transport Secretary was right when further information came forward to resign. What a marked contrast to behaviour in the last 14 years. And she talks about immigration, record levels of immigration under the previous government, nearly 1 million net money, and she was the cheerleader. She was the one urging on the removal of the caps for work visas. She was thanking the previous Home Secretary for the work that was done. She championed it, she advocated it, record numbers of immigration.
Mr. Speaker,
Keir Starmer didn't hold back at Max, delivering a sharp and unforgiving takedown of Kemi Badenoch's glaring inconsistencies and poor judgment. He wasted no time pointing out the absurdity of her attacks on the Prime Minister over immigration, given her own record. Starmer reminded the House that Badenoch had been a cheerleader for removing caps on work visas, even publicly thanking the former Home Secretary for policies that led to record high net migration, nearly 1 million people. Her sudden outrage over immigration policies, he argued, wasn't just hypocritical but entirely self-serving. But Starmer didn't stop there. He highlighted the Prime Minister's appointment of a convicted perpetrator as Transport Secretary, a decision Badenoch appeared unwilling or unable to justify. Starmer contrasted this with Labour's push for accountability, pointing out the stark moral void in the Conservative Party's leadership. He also called out Badenoch's party for opposing nearly every measure Labour introduced to limit immigration, as well as her silence on letters urging the government not to deport foreign criminals. Starmer's remarks were direct and damning. He painted Badenoch not as a principled leader, but as someone willing to twist her positions to suit the moment, regardless of the consequences. By the end of his critique, it was clear Badenoch wasn't just out of her depth, she had been utterly exposed.
He's obfuscating, but I'm going to keep him on the topic. He owes the House an explanation. He said that the former Transport Secretary was only asked to resign after further information came to light.
What is that?
What was that further information?
Exactly.
I'm not going to disclose private conversations. Further information came to light. The Justice Secretary resigned. As I say, what a marked contrast. Whilst she's obsessing with the Westminster issues, we're getting on with fixing the mess, fixing the foundations, that £22 billion black hole, our prisons bursting, Mr. Speaker, as we found out last week, nearly 1 million net migration numbers because of the Tory open borders.
Keir Starmer did not hold back in his sharp and scathing retort to Kemi Badenoch during their exchange at Mickey's, leaving no doubt about his disdain for her approach. Badenoch, attempting to corner him with demands for details on the resignation of the former Transport Secretary, was swiftly dismissed with Starmer's refusal to indulge her obsession with Westminster issues. Instead, he redirected attention to the dire state of the nation under Conservative leadership, accusing her of fixating on petty political theatrics while the country grapples with real crises. Starmer drove his point home by highlighting the pest $22 billion black hole in the economy, overcrowded prisons, and soaring net migration numbers, directly attributing these failures to Tory policies. His biting remarks portrayed Badenoch as a lightweight, out of touch with the real challenges facing the public, and more concerned with scoring cheap political points than addressing the chaos her party has created. It was a brutal takedown that underscored her inability to lead effectively, exposing her as a symbol of the very incompetence and hypocrisy that has plagued the Conservative Party.
No, Mr. Speaker, she says she's not talking about immigration. I'm not surprised. And I advise her and all of them not to talk about the economy or immigration for another 5 years. Mr. Speaker, I gently remind her that 2 of her predecessors had convictions for breaking the COVID rules. I'd also invite her to look at the OECD report of this morning, which has upgraded growth for next year and the year after, which now puts us on target to be the highest growing major economy in Europe in the next 2 years. She should welcome that.
Keir Starmer's response to Kemi Badenoch at Mickey's was a masterclass in political humiliation, leaving her arguments in shreds and her credibility thoroughly dismantled. When Badenoch attempted to corner him on the resignation of the former Transport Secretary, Starmer deftly turned the tables, refusing to be drawn into her distraction tactics. Instead, he delivered a scathing reminder of her own party's catastrophic failures, mocking the Conservatives' record on immigration and the economy, 2 areas they have left in absolute disarray. His sharp quip about conviction politicians, not politicians with convictions, not politicians with convictions, was a brutal and memorable jab, reducing Badenoch's attack to nothing more than a hollow display of theatrics. Starmer didn't stop there. He seized the moment to highlight the Conservatives' broken promises, including their failure to deliver economic stability and growth. By contrasting Badenoch's flailing criticisms with the OECD's upgraded forecast of the UK becoming Europe's highest-growing economy under Labour's potential stewardship, he underscored her lack of substance and the Tories' lack of vision. His calculated, biting remarks exposed Badenoch as a figure more interested in showmanship than addressing the real issues facing the country. By the end of the exchange, it was clear she wasn't just outmaneuvered. She was entirely outclassed. Thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts or opinions, feel free to share them in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel for more updates, and join us on Telegram for exclusive content and discussion. Your support means a lot.